Which SEC team will make the deepest run and win it all this year? It's been 13 years since the SEC won the tournament. That streak ends now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com. All right, on today's show, we're going to break it all down. The SEC making history, getting the most conference teams to ever receive an NCAA tournament bid. 14 SEC teams going to the big dance, breaking the record of 11 teams set by the Big East back in 2011. And let's take a look at it as the SEC, like we said, 14 teams in. Auburn and Florida both in as 1 seeds, Alabama and Tennessee in as 2 seeds, Kentucky in as a 3 seed, Texas A&M in as a 4 seed, Mizzou and Ole Miss both in as 6 seeds. Mississippi State is in as an 8. Georgia in as a 9, as well as Oklahoma. Arkansas, they were a bubble team. They make it in as a 10 seed. Vanderbilt makes it in as a 10 seed. They were on the bubble for about a week. And then how about Texas? We were saying Texas, after they beat Texas A&M in the SEC tournament, that might have been enough to get them in. And yet, Sunday morning, a lot of people still had Texas out. But Texas gets in. It's a play-in game. They're 11 seed versus 11 seed. They'll play Xavier, but they're in. And I know some people are saying, well, are they technically in? I mean, it's a play-in game. You didn't really make the field of 64. Look, the field of 68 is what matters, right? I mean, the 68 is the big dance. So regardless, that's what we have. But Auburn, they win the SEC regular season championship, but they are stumbling into the big dance. Bruce Pearl's team, they suffered back-to-back losses to end the regular season. They went 1-1 in the SEC tournament. But it was Florida who ultimately cut down the nets in the SEC tournament, winning it the first conference tournament title of Todd Golden's tenure. The last 3 times Florida won the SEC tournament, they made the Final Four in the NCAA tournament. And these Gators look to be writing yet another great chapter of Florida Gator basketball. They beat Tennessee 86-77 on Sunday to capture the program's 5th SEC tournament title. And like we said, teams like Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and Vanderbilt were all mentioned as being teams on the bubble. By Selection Sunday, only Texas was seen as a bubble team, but surprising that they got in. But the SEC, 14 teams. Look, I saw somebody on social media saying, the SEC bias, I'm so sick of it. Bro, this is the first time the SEC's ever gotten benefit of the doubt in college basketball. You want to argue football? Yeah. You want to argue baseball? Yeah. You want to argue women's basketball? Yeah. The SEC gets the benefit of the doubt a lot of that. But in men's basketball, they never get the benefit of the doubt. So this has been a historic year. The basketball's been at an all-time high. So let's dive into it. Let's take a look at the field. And we start in the South as 1 seed Auburn will take on the winner of the 16 seed. It's a play-in game. Alabama State versus St. Francis. Look, Auburn's going to be no matter who wins that one. I don't think this is, a year we're going to have a 16 beat a 1. So I think Auburn's going to win that one. Sets up to get the winner of Louisville-Creighton in the second round. Now, real quick on Auburn. They've lost 3 of their last 4 to finish the season. I saw a note that said no team has ever gone on to win it all after losing 3 of their last 4 coming into the tournament. So consider that. You also want to consider the site. I mean, if Louisville knocks off Creighton in the first round, you're potentially getting a second-round game against Louisville in Lexington, Kentucky. That is just an hour drive down the road for their fans. It would be a heavy home field advantage for Louisville versus Bruce Pearl's crew. So that's going to be tough. But look, Johni Broome, he's going to bring it. He's been outstanding all year, candidate for the Naismith Player of the Year. But his supporting cast has to step up. It's got to be guys like Denver Jones, Miles Kelly, and Pettiford, Baker Mazzara. They have all got to play their part if Auburn is going to go on a deep run. They got to play like the team that started the year 27-2, right? That team that we saw that could do no wrong. Start 27-2, but you lose 3 of your last 4. Certainly stumbling in, but hit that reset button, get refocused, and Auburn can certainly make a run. Another team in the South region, it's 4-seed Texas A&M against 13-seed Yale. A lot of people I've seen are already picking Yale to beat A&M here. Yale shoots threes very well. A&M doesn't. Yale shoots 38% from three. That is 17th best in the nation. A&M shoots 31%. That ranks 323rd. It's the third straight year Buzz Williams makes the tournament in College Station, but he has just one tournament win in his previous 5 seasons at A&M. They did lose a tough one in double overtime against Texas in the SEC tourney. They did just knock off number 1 Auburn 2 weeks ago. And look, Wade Taylor, Henry Coleman, when A&M is on, they are tough, they are physical, they out-rebound you. Let's see if Buzz Williams can get his guys up for this one. But a tough Michigan team could be waiting in the second round, even if they do get past Yale. But just know, a lot of people picking Yale to pull off that upset in round 1 against the Aggies. And then the other team in the South from the SEC, it's 6-seed Ole Miss against 11-seed, again, another play-in game, San Diego State versus North Carolina. This just feels like a tough draw for Chris Beard's crew. I mean, look, obviously North Carolina's resume isn't great this year. A lot of people think they didn't even deserve to get in the tournament, but still a traditional blue blood. And if you saw him in that ACC tournament, I mean, a lane violation cost him the game against Duke. And then you got San Diego State. They made the tournament. I mean, they basically make the tournament every year. They played in the national championship game 2 years ago. They made it to the Sweet 16 last year. They're a little down this year, but still 2 really tough programs, no matter who Ole Miss gets. And Ole Miss coming off a nice win against Arkansas in the SEC tournament, played hard against Auburn, lost by 5. They did beat Tennessee just 2 weeks ago. Let's see if Sean Padula can hit some big shots, some clutch threes. He did it in the SEC tournament. Let's see if he can do it here. So that is the South region. We move over to the West. And here we have number 1 seed Florida versus 16 seed Norfolk State. And the Gators are one of the hottest teams in the country. They have come in, they won 6 in a row. They've won 12 of their last 13. They ran through the SEC tournament, beating Mizzou, Alabama, Tennessee, all top 25 teams. They beat Alabama twice in the past 2 weeks. They beat number 1 Auburn in their house back in February. Walter Clayton playing like a stud right now. He dropped 22 points in the SEC tournament final win. But Alex Condon, Will Richard, I mean, Todd Golden has this team rolling. They believe in themselves. Could be a tough round 2 game against the back-to-back defending national champs in UConn. But as we know, this UConn team does not look like the team from the past couple of seasons. Speaking of that UConn team, our other matchup in the West, it is 9-seed Oklahoma against 8-seed UConn. Like we said, not the same UConn team we've seen the last 2 years, but still a tough draw for Porter Moser's bunch. Oklahoma beat Georgia in the SEC tournament, lost a heartbreaker in the final seconds against Kentucky. And freshman Jeremiah Fears is being touted as a lottery pick in this year's NBA draft. His last 2 games, he scored 29 and 28. Assists, rebounds, steals, he does it all. He will have to be special, as will Jalen Moore, Duke Miles, and others. But I would lean towards UConn to beat Oklahoma. Look, I'm bragging on the SEC getting 14 teams in, but I think at least half this field doesn't make it out the first round. I just think there's some tough draws here for some of these teams. So I've got UConn advancing and taking off Florida in the second round. Again, Florida got to just stay humble, keep doing what you're doing, but I think they should beat that UConn team. Then we've got 6-seed Mizzou against 11-seed Drake. Drake went 30-3 this year, 2 completely different styles. Drake plays incredibly slow. Mizzou, they can fill it up. Both teams draw fouls very well. They get a lot of steals. And Mizzou does get to play this one in Wichita, which is just 4 hours, a 4-hour drive from Como. So maybe their fans can make the drive and back them up. Tamar Bates, he has been playing very well these past couple of games. Dennis Gates back in the tournament after going 0-18 in SEC play last year. He did win a tournament game his first season 2 years ago at Mizzou. That was his first year there. But this seems to be another popular one that everybody's jumping on, picking Drake in the upset over Mizzou. We'll see where that betting line goes throughout the week. And then the last team over here in the West, we have got 10-seed Arkansas versus 7-seed Kansas. I mean, on the surface, John Calipari versus Bill Self. That's appealing within itself. The talk is Arkansas may get Boogie Flan back. We'll get to some injury talk in a little bit. But we know the Hogs, they started SEC play 0-5. They went 9-6 down the stretch after that. in a tough SEC schedule. Trevon Brazile, Jonas Adu, those are the vets. And then you got the young guys in Big Z, Carter Knox, DJ Wagner. I think a great chance here for Calipari to do something he hadn't done much of the past few years at Kentucky, and that's win a tournament game. And then, of course, the sexy matchup of potentially getting Rick Pitino and St. John's in the second round versus Calipari. I mean, again, must-see TV. I think Arkansas is playing some pretty good defense as of late. The offense is doing enough. I think they have a chance in this one against Kansas. But it's just so funny, man. You think of all these teams that, traditional powers around college basketball that just underachieved this year, right? That aren't their typical powerful selves, like Baylor and Gonzaga and, UConn as an 8 seed, Kansas as a 7 seed. Doesn't mean the brands don't, can't like flip a switch and go, oh, it's March Madness time. Boom, flip a switch. We're blue blood for a reason. Let's go. So regardless, but I just think that Arkansas team is fascinating, man. If they can get healthy, who knows? Calipari, he's got a little pressure on him, right? They pulled him over from Kentucky to come win tournament games at Arkansas. It wasn't just, hey, let's make the tournament and see what happens. That's kind of what was happening in the last 5 years at Kentucky, and it wasn't a whole lot of winning. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll hit on the other side of the bracket here on Locked On SEC. Stay with us. Hey, I want to remind you guys, eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor meals, you're going to get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen. Going to give you 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week. You can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, whatever it is. Their convenience is going to meet nutrition, and you're going to love that. Factor is going to keep you on track with healthy, delicious meals without the time-consuming prep. The Korean beef bowl, the creamy Parmesan chicken, those are some of the favorites out there. They taste homemade, but take no effort. And Factor also offers smoothies, breakfast, snacks, so you always have something nutritious and ready to go. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Supply House. And look, you can get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website, packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you will find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Go join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order at supplyhouse.com. All right, guys, diving back into it. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out. We'll have more football talk throughout the week. We'll continue our SEC Spring Series. We'll have, we had Caden Durham, LSU running back on the show last week. We'll have Oklahoma running back Sam Franklin coming up on the show later this week, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But back into basketball talk as we are breaking down the brackets and the SEC teams to make it. A record 14 SEC teams making the NCAA tournament. So let's jump over to the East region where we start with 2-seed Alabama getting Robert Morris in the first round. Bama got blown out by Florida in the SEC semifinal over the weekend, but they beat Kentucky soundly on Friday. They beat Auburn in their house last weekend. Lost some close ones to Tennessee and Florida. I still really like this Alabama team. Mark Sears, a super senior. Love his leadership. Grant Nelson, of course, his health will be big. He's another fifth-year senior. And then you got guys like Philon, Youngblood, Diabate, Aiden Holloway. When their offense is on, nobody can stop them. I like Alabama to do some damage here. I think they'll get past Robert Morris. And then, of course, they will get in the second round the winner of St. Mary's and Vanderbilt. And that brings us to our next SEC team. 10 seed Vanderbilt versus 7 seed St. Mary's. Vandy's just had a streaky season, man. They lose games. It feels like they lose games they should win, and then they sometimes win games that they have no business winning. Just in the past few weeks, they picked up wins over top 25 teams like Ole Miss, A&M, Mizzou. They have lost 3 in a row to Arkansas, Georgia, and Texas. They're just not playing great right now. Jason Edwards, he's been pretty good. He had 24 in the loss to Georgia, 20 in the loss to Texas. I tip of the gap to first-year coach Mark Byington coming over from James Madison, making the tournament in year 1. I just don't think Vandy wins this one. A St. Mary's team that has won 18 of their last 20, I think it's a bad draw for Vandy. I think their season ends here. I think St. Mary's beats them. And that will make a very tough draw for Alabama in round 2. That's a really good St. Mary's team that Nate Oates and company would get in round 2. So that's a heck of a coin flipper game. We'll keep an eye on that one if and when we get there. How about 8 seed Mississippi State making it versus 9 seed Baylor? Chris Jans's crew. A team I liked a lot earlier in the year, but they have been up and down in SEC play. They have not beat a ranked team in over a month. Not a great Baylor team at 19-14. Certainly one of the more underachieving teams for Scott Drew. But I looked at their schedule. A lot of their losses were close. Their last 4 losses have all been by 4 points or less. Since February 19th, Mississippi State has just 2 wins, and both of them were against LSU, one of the worst teams in the SEC this year. Josh Hubbard, he's been awesome this year. He's averaging 23 points a game over his last 5. But I just don't believe in the Bulldogs defensively. Even if they get by Baylor, they would get Duke in the second round, and I think they got no shot against them. But I'm going to go with Baylor upset Mississippi State. Like I said, it's some of these big brands that underachieved this year, but I just think it's some bad draws for some of these SEC teams that maybe aren't playing their best basketball right now. All right, that is the East, and now we head to the Midwest, where it is absolutely loaded with SEC teams. First up, a play-in game with 11 seed Texas versus 11 seed Xavier, however you say it. A lot of the projections on Sunday had Texas out, but Rodney Terry's bunch lives to fight another day. You have to wonder if SEC Freshman of the Year Trey Johnson maybe swayed the vote a little for the committee. He's been so fun to watch all year. He's expected to be a lottery pick. 19-15 on the season. It feels like this Texas team will likely lose, their play-in game, but they have faced some tough teams all year, so you never know. Xavier had won 7 in a row before they lost to Marquette in the Big East quarterfinal. So they've been playing good basketball. If Texas wins this one, they get 6 seed Illinois in the first round. So look, with Rodney Terry already on the hot seat, this one feels very unlikely the Longhorns get to the round of 32. But we'll see. Crazy things have happened, but I don't think Texas beats Xavier. But Trey Johnson, fun to watch. He could do it. Also in this region, we've got 9 seed Georgia. They were playing 8 seed Gonzaga. Another one, not your traditional dominant season from Gonzaga, but a tough team nonetheless. Georgia, they looked dead in the water at the end of February, sitting at 16-11. They were just 4-10 in the SEC, but they went on to win 4 straight with a massive win over top 5 Florida. They fell short to OU in the SEC tournament, but Asa Newell has been so fun to watch. Silas Damari, the offense, just it's been so fun to watch for Georgia. Gonzaga comes in having won 9 of their last 10. They won the West Coast Conference tournament final over St. Mary's. Just feels like a bad matchup for Mike White's crew. Again, another one where I've got one and done for Georgia and an SEC team. All right, the 2 bigger teams in this side. How about 3 seed Kentucky taking on 14 seed Troy? Since 2020, Kentucky has won just 1 NCAA tournament game. That was 2 seasons ago when they beat Providence. So the bar was low for Mark Pope coming in. If he can win a first-round game against Troy, he will have tied Coach Cal for tournament wins the past 5 seasons at Kentucky. The one knock on Mark Pope, though, he made the tournament twice at BYU, but he lost both times. He has never won a tournament game as a head coach. So certainly an achievement to get Kentucky to a 3 seed in his first season in Lexington, having to build up that roster from scratch. And look at this matchup. from what I was reading, Troy plays very slow and Kentucky likes to run. Troy plays pretty good defense, but most importantly, it doesn't look like they're going to have some random dude who's going to hit 10 threes like Jack Goldkeep did last year. The Cats should beat Troy, and then they would get the winner of that Illinois versus Texas Xavier matchup in the second round. More on that in just a second, but a potential Tennessee-Kentucky rematch in the Sweet 16 potentially. Cats did win both of those games this season. But, yeah, look, Kentucky, I think for Mark Pope, the expectations, win a tournament game, right? I mean, he had to rebuild that entire roster. They get to the tournament. He won an SEC tournament game. If he can win an NCAA tournament game, look, they'll sing his praises. But also not a bad draw, right? I mean, they could win too. Sweet 16 is not crazy for Kentucky. And how about 2-seed Tennessee, our 14th team in this mix? They will play the 15-seed Wofford. Vols have been red hot down the stretch. Rick Barnes' crew, they have won 10 of their last 12. Remember, that's playing an SEC schedule. Very impressive. They came up short to Florida in the SEC tournament final. Chaz Lanier and Zakai Ziegler are two guys that can help carry this team. Love the defense from guys like Akpara and Meshack. Vols should handle Wofford, but a matchup with the winner of UCLA, Utah State in the second round. Look, if Utah State pulls off that first round upset of UCLA, a potential cakewalk for the Vols to the Sweet 16. A third game against Kentucky could be tough, but maybe it's in Illinois or in Xavier. And if that happens, you have to like the draw that Tennessee got. Could be a potential Houston matchup in the Elite Eight. Vols may have gotten, luck of the draw here. We'll see what happens. All right, so how about the SEC team I think can make the deepest run? Look, Florida is becoming the sexy pick. Everybody's jumping on the Florida bandwagon because they've been so good. But the team that I'm going with, I still really like Alabama. Look, like I mentioned earlier, Bama got blown out by Florida in the SEC semifinal, but they beat Auburn in their house last weekend. They beat Kentucky on Friday. I just like, man, Mark Sears, obviously the health of Grant Nelson is going to be big, but Nate Oates, he has seemingly taken a step forward each of his past few years at Alabama. He made the tournament in 22. He got to the Sweet 16 in 23. He got to the Final Four in 24. Doing the math here, the sequence in 25, I think Alabama takes that next step forward, and I think Alabama gets to the national championship and plays for one. Now, Nate Oates, remember, he made it to the tournament several times, even at Buffalo. He is built for this. His teams play their best basketball when they get here to the tournament or to the NCAA tournament. So I like Alabama to get to the national championship. And here's who I've got in my Elite Eight. Here are the matchups. I've got Auburn versus Iowa State. I've got Duke versus Alabama. I've got Florida versus St. John's. And I've got Houston versus Tennessee. So why not? Look, I'm half kidding here, but let's go with an all Final Four of the SEC. Give me an all SEC Final Four of Auburn versus Florida and Bama versus Tennessee. And then we'll take why not an Iron Bowl matchup of Auburn versus Bama in the national championship, and Alabama gets the victory. I think that would be a heck of a storyline. I mean, I know Greg Sankey would love it. I know a lot of folks at the SEC office would love it, but there you have it. Going with a little bit off the radar. Look, we're locked on SEC, right? We have to be homers. We got to show love to the crew. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to get all four teams in, but it would be awesome if we got three of the four, at least two of the Final Four, right? Like two of the Final Four teams from the SEC. Show some love. We got 14 teams in. Somebody's got to make a run and end this title drought of 13 years since the SEC won a title. It's got to come to an end. The SEC wins titles in every other sport: football, women's basketball, swimming and diving, tennis, track and field. I mean, every sport except for men's basketball. That drought's going to end this year. The SEC is going to win a national championship. More to come here on Locked On SEC, part of Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And look, March Madness is here, and FanDuel, they are giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Go pick your favorites. If you got an eye on a few underdogs this year, FanDuel makes it easy for you to back them with spreads, totals, game props. And with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app, super simple to use. And when you win, You get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com. Get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That's over at FanDuel.com.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, final segment here on Locked On SEC. I just want to catch you guys up with some health updates as we talk about these teams making the NCAA tournament and some big injuries to keep an eye on. Mention Alabama. Grant Nelson is expected to see a knee specialist ahead of the tournament. Nate Oates shared that news on Sunday afternoon. Nelson suffered a knee injury in Alabama's loss to Florida on Saturday. And Alabama's hope of making a deep tournament run may rest on whether or not Nelson gets some good news from that knee specialist. He's one of their most important versatile players, plays both ways. And without Nelson, Bama would be forced to rely on their backcourt for all their offensive production, like Mark Sears and Philon. Look, they could win a game or two, right? But like, you want to be at your full strength. So that will be big. We'll keep an eye on that one and certainly keep you guys up to date on Grant Nelson's injury status. Another one to keep an eye on, Mark Pope sharing some positive injury updates on Lamont Butler. Their guard will be available for Kentucky's opening round game this week. He aggravated his shoulder in the win over Oklahoma in the SEC tournament a couple of days ago. He's averaging 11.5 points, 4.3 assists per game. And Mark Pope said, look, the plan is for him to play for sure in the SEC tournament. Took a hit on the shoulder. He said he's going to be great for this tournament. He lives for March. So certainly good news there. How about over at Arkansas? As John Calipari talking about his team a little bit banged up and getting ready for this tournament run. Aduthiero is doubtful to be available for Arkansas during this first weekend of the tournament. He was Arkansas's most important player on the offensive side of the floor prior to his injury, averaging 15.6 points per game. Took over a lot of the shot creation responsibilities. The other one to keep an eye on, Boogie Flan. And as John Calipari said, he wants to play. May only play 10 to 15 minutes instead of having 7 or 2 in foul trouble. Now we have a little breathing room. But Boogie Flan he's expected to play. Aduthiero not expected to play for the Hogs. And then lastly, Mizzou, they gave an injury update on Mark Mitchell, their forward. He is expected to be available for the NCAA tournament. He left the SEC tournament with a knee injury earlier this week, but turns out it was just a precautionary move. And Dennis Gates saying Mitchell is expected to play, and that will be big for the Mizzou Tigers to make a run. And so the latest odds from our friends over at FanDuel, and look at a few other sport books out there just to kind of see who the favorites are. According to a few of them, they've got Duke as the odds-on favorite, right? Cooper Flagg expected to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft, and he got banged up and left the ACC tournament a couple days ago for them, but Duke still went on an incredible run through the ACC tournament. So even, Cooper Flagg banged up, 100%, whatever, Duke is considered the odds-on favorite. But right behind them, at 7-2 odds, or plus 350, basically, we'll call it. You've got Auburn and Florida right there. So Duke the favorite, Auburn and Florida slightly behind them in terms of odds. And then behind them at plus 750, it is Houston. And then the rest of the SEC, you can get Tennessee at 16-1. You can get Alabama at 18-1. Pretty good odds there. We just gave you Alabama's our pick to win it all. 18-1 odds on Alabama. And then if you want to go a little bit longer shot, Kentucky is 50-1. So if you like Mark Pope to make an incredible, miraculous run in year 1 there. And then how about A&M and Buzz Williams? 80-1 odds on the Aggies to make it all the way. So not great value, but if we're talking teams that have a chance, certainly Auburn and Florida are right there in that mix and could be the first teams in 13 years to bring the SEC home a national championship, with Tennessee and Alabama kind of a little bit longer shots. But it's great news there, man. We hope that they can get it done and bring the SEC something to celebrate in men's basketball. It's about time. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here, and the most informed college basketball guys out there talking you through all the madness. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. Come on back tomorrow. We will talk to you guys then.